Welcome back. You're still watching Network Africa on Channels Television. Now, in the wake of the harsh economic realities which Egypt is currently facing, President Al-Sisi is warning Egyptians about strict economic measures which are looming in a bid to reduce the country's deficit. This announcement comes as almost a week after the government entered talks with the International Monetary Fund for a $12 billion loan program. Egypt has been negotiating with the IMF on a $12 billion three-year assistance project to help shore up the economy, and the Egypt-IMF deal is expected to be finalized sometime this month. For more on the state of the Egyptian economy and also other issues, we're joined by the Voice of America's Edward Yeranian, who is standing by in Cairo. Edward, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure, Cynthia.
Now, do we know for certain when this Egypt-IMF deal will be finalized and how the money will be used?
Well, no, there's a great deal of speculation on both of those points. The media has been talking about coming to some sort of deal within the month of August. Certainly the market is poised for something to happen in August. The traders, the Forex traders, are running scared in terms of the rates. They've come down in the anticipation of a deal. And I think there are a lot of logistic reasons to expect a deal because Egypt has large natural gas reserves in the Mediterranean that are likely to be coming online by the end of the year or early next year. And that represents a lot of money. So I think the IMF, no matter what their concerns are with the structural issues of the Egyptian economy, will have to think that, hey, yeah, Egypt has assets that are going to be coming online somewhere down the road. So there are a lot of reasons to expect a deal, although, of course, you never know. Some of the conditions that they've spoken about in the past are really tough for an economy like Egypt's, and certainly they would be very unpopular.
Well, Edward, we also understand that the president addressed Egypt's security challenges yesterday. We understand that he said that Egypt is now the semblance of a state and not necessarily a real state. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, I saw that was one of the talking points in the New York Times article on Egypt, which incidentally had nary a positive graph in the whole story, which I think should tell you something, since usually stories have a little bit of positive news and a little bit of negative news, just to be balanced. But in any case, that particular quote came from a speech several months ago. I really don't remember what he was talking about exactly, but certainly he tends to talk from the heart and says a lot of things that perhaps he regrets after he says them. Indeed, there are problems with the Egyptian state. Certainly, you can see some of them in terms of its authority on the grid, on the map. Even traffic, people are flouting the law by going the wrong way on one-way streets, and that was always my barometer for the authority of the government when I lived in Lebanon for 20 years. So certainly that's
Edward,
not a positive. But the police are out there, and there is very much less chaos out there than last year.
Yes, Edward, but you're saying that this announcement was made a couple of months ago, but then made public yesterday. Is that also the case as regards the president's announcement about the need for Egypt to establish law and order and strong institutions to reverse the situation that the country is going through at the moment?
Well, I think that's been one of the points he's raised over the months. I think he's raised that in a number of speeches.
Okay, since you're saying that he raised this point months ago, what steps are being taken to ensure that that Egypt goes in this direction?
Well, clearly the police have been acting with more muscle than they were last year or the year before. They're clearly out there. You can see them cleaning the roads, just moving vehicles that people have parked chaotically. You can see that there have been considerably fewer attacks on public infrastructure, on electricity pylons like we were seeing last year and the year before. You can see that the electricity company has finally got its act together, and we have no brownouts this summer, unlike last summer and the summer before. You can see that the government institutions, they're operating in the center of the city. You can see the Prime Minister holding his cabinet meetings. You can hear people talking in the press about the
Edward, that sounds like good steps are being taken, but we'll definitely reach out to you later in the week to probably find out which steps are being taken as regards the tourism industry, because we know that's what Egypt is currently suffering right now in terms of the sectors, that it's experiencing huge challenges as regards that. Edward, thank you very much for your time on Network Africa. We appreciate your input as always.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, let's take a look at security matters. According to the Pentagon, the U.S. military conducted airstrikes on Monday, that was yesterday, August the 1st, targeting Islamic State militants in the Libyan city of Sirte. Islamic State still holds several strategic sites in central Sirte, and that's according to the university and the main hospital and the Ouagadougou Conference Hall, where fighters believe they've stocked large quantities of ammunition and provisions.
At the request of Libya's government of national accord, the United States conducted precision airstrikes against ISIL targets in Sirte, Libya, to support GNA-affiliated forces seeking to defeat ISIL in its primary stronghold in Libya. These strikes were authorized by the President following a recommendation from Secretary Carter and Chairman Dunford. They are consistent with our approach of combating ISIL by working with capable and motivated local partners. The specific targets will be precision targets. These are targets that the GNA, as we've indicated, has already made progress on the ground, significant progress on the ground against ISIL in the Sirte area. But they're precision targets which they've asked for our assistance with, in which they have had more trouble. These are targets, for example, I can detail today, was one of the targets struck today was a tank. It is that kind of precision location, precision target that we'll be targeting, that the GNA at this point felt like that would be a helpful support for their efforts.
We're turning our attention now to East Africa. Well, unfortunately, there was another building collapse in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, this morning. But thankfully, unlike what we saw happen back in May of this year, where 50 people died, there were no casualties in this instance. And that's because the building in question was actually scheduled to be demolished, or earmarked, as some put it, and no one was present in the building at the time. Hence, there were no casualties recorded. You should know that building collapses are not a rare occurrence in Kenya because, as I said earlier on, 50 people died in May, but the government is doing what it can in order to ensure that situations like this do not occur by destroying buildings that are dangerous just before there's any situation like what we saw back in May. Now, we're looking at what's happening in Uganda. When we come back from the break, we're looking at the increase in police violence. The situation has intensified to the point that rights groups like Amnesty International are calling for investigations into reported incidents of police beatings. Stay with us.